And I just started recording, so we just called the meeting to order.
You want me to say it again?
Sure.
I'll call this meeting to order May 10th at 12:06 p.m.
Thank you. So I'm going to share the agenda here. So our first order of business, as always, is going to be to approve the minutes from April. Then we'll go over our financials and proceed to old business. So to the minutes. Did anyone have any amendments they wanted to make to the April minutes? If not, then we just need a motion to accept them. Teresa, you were muted, but I saw your mouth. I lip read.
Okay, so should I say it again?
I think so.
Okay, I put a motion forward to accept the April 2022 minutes.
And do we have a second?
Oh, a second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the financial documents. Let's see if I can. I'd love to open these all at once, but we cannot. So let me just get myself organized here. I just thought of such a great way to do this, and I'm going to take just 2 seconds to set it up. Okay. All right. So these are the financial statements that were sent out. Oh, this is, this might be incorrect. The balance sheet as of February, that looks like the report generated.
Is it just the headline that's incorrect? Because I think it says May 7th at the top.
It does here. It might be. I'm normally pretty careful about adjusting the dates on each one. Here, at least you can see this is one we know to be accurate, the profit and loss. The expenses that we had last month, were my independent contractor's expenses. And then this was an expense for the designer that we contracted with. And then the remaining payments on the learning sessions, that program is now complete. So we spent $7,000. The only bit of that money that was from our unrestricted funds balance was the $600. That was for me. And I also prepared a breakdown for the board. So Teresa and I performed a bank reconciliation, and accounting for checks that haven't yet cleared, our ending balance at the end of April was $34,191.18. And then figuring that, looking at all of the total income so far from the ADLN grant, minus all of the total expenses that we've logged so far within the ADLN grant, we can figure that $17,582.70 of our cash on hand is restricted for the ADLN grant, which leaves $16,000 and change in our coffers. And we know that we haven't received an invoice yet from our 2021 audit, but the peak that they estimated for us was about $11,000. We also know that in the coming final disbursement for the ADLN, which will include the funding for the Housing Trust Fund and other things. But so in the final payout for the ADLN programs, per the plan that the ADLN team approved, we were going to zero out the admin and programming line that was dedicated in the grant plan. And so $6,823.78 from the grant money will be reserved just for HCDPA as sort of compensation for overall hosting the grant. And then we're also expected, between now and the end of the year to continue to receive about $1,300 worth of loan payments from Gallivan Housing Resources, which means, so subtracting the audit and adding these expenses that over from here to the end of the year, we have about $13,800 that's our working budget for paying for our insurance, which is due this month or next month, and paying for my fee and our legal fees and any other incidentals that would come out of our unrestricted funds. So that should give you an idea of what we're working with. And that is, considering that figures in the expense of the audit, that's not that bad. For the rest of, we've figured before that our annual expenses in the sort of shoestring state that we're operating in have been between $20,000 and $25,000. So that's the update. That to me communicates that we have, that we have some decisions to make about property dispositions, and over the next couple, we're no longer in as serious a cash flow crunch as we were at the end of last year. Does anyone have any questions about the financial statements? Okay, then I think we can move on. As for our balance sheet, other than our cash balance, nothing else has changed. Okay. For bill approval, the invoice I have in hand, the only invoice for this month is my invoice, which I'll show. Here, that was sent to the board. And I don't have any other remaining invoices in hand for, I know that eventually the ADLN will have another invoice due for our designer, but we didn't have that invoice yet. And we also later in the agenda will be looking at a second MOU for Greater Hudson Promise neighborhoods. So that's another check that we could write this after this meeting, but we'll consider that in a separate section of the meeting. So for now, it's just my invoice is our only bill this month.
Do we have to put a motion to approve the invoice as a board?
That's right, like we typically do, just a motion to pay the bills.
Okay. I put a motion forward to pay the bills for April 2022.
I responsibly second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed?
Right, I think we can move forward. Thank you. And so our first order of business is
can I say something? Could you resend the corrected bills that you were showing that had the date all mixed up?
Yeah, the financial statements. I will do that. I think especially our bank reconciliation we know is correct. And how about I just go ahead and show that so you can see the.
No, I saw that one. The other ones that we didn't know whether the date was wrong or the figures.
Yeah, the one that had February at the top.
Yeah, I apologize. Normally more thorough than that. I don't know how that happened. But I'll resend them after the meeting.
Resend that to make sure that we're voting on the right thing. Okay.
Our first order of old business is the ADLN program updates. And so we'll pass it to Michelle.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. So as you know, ADLN is winding down. So the final things that are part of it is the Hudson roofs. We still have some money allocated for that through Greater Promise Neighborhood. So that'll be another item today is voting to provide another grant to them because they did a really great job dispersing that to families last month. And then we'll have a couple more invoices in June and July as we finish out outreach, our graphic design, PR consultant, and then we're going to have a housing strategy consultant as per the plan that was approved by the ADLN team. So Enterprise extended our time to spend all the funds until December of this year. We don't need that, like we'll be done with this in June or July, but just gives a little more breathing room so that we don't have to rush through things. And so we'll plan to finish this out around July or so, but just helps us that we don't have to get this all done by the end of May. And then in terms of the bank account and the disbursement, so Enterprise will send us one more disbursement that comes into the HCDPA account that will go to that to these invoices, and it will go to the cost that Sarah said to provide HCDPA with reimbursement for auditing and all that. So that will be coming in by the end of May. They're holding it up just because we're also creating the bank account for the housing trust fund so that we can put the money for the trust fund directly into that account. So then after we have that and we finish these invoices, invoices for the housing trust fund will go through them and not through HCDPA. That is my ADLN update. Any questions?
I just want to ask a question. HCDPA has no decision-making process over what you just said. It's all, you're giving us an update on what you're doing, and we don't have anything to say about it.
So basically, the ADLN team at Enterprise decided how the money should be spent. The role of HCDPA is making sure that when we hand the invoices in, that we're doing that, like we're executing the plan.
Okay. I just want to
So
understand.
so it's like you're kind of overseeing that. We're implementing it as we had agreed upon.
Teresa, if I could, you do have responsibility right now because you have entered into contracts with vendors. You received the original grant agreement and entered into that with Enterprise. So you, HCDPA, entered into the sub-agreements with the city that you do have an oversight role over. So just to be clear, you were the granting agent, you were the sub-grantee, you entered into contracts with various vendors, including the city, to operate these programs. But you do have some oversight role to have reporting back to you, okay?
Okay.
Question.
Ugh.
Okay.
Right. I still have questions. I just can't get them all out of my head. But go ahead.
Okay, if you want to talk more at another point, feel free to let me know. So basically, this kind of this relationship with the grant and HCDPA is wrapping up in June and maybe the beginning of July, and then it'll be a little bit more of a clear relationship. So I guess can I transition to talking about the housing trust fund, Sarah?
Yes, but you need to, at some point, I was thinking in this section was when we would also review the MOU with Promise Neighborhood. So perhaps we should do that first and we share it with the board. And I can pull it up again here. One moment. Gosh, where's the most recent one? Here it is. So here we are. So this is a duplicate of a previous MOU that we confirmed, except we've updated the amount. So previously we granted $9,000 that had been left unspent in the Hudson Routes line for the ADLN grant that we had initially been in arrangement with St. Catherine's. And so there was just a little bit of leftover money by the time that their contract ended. And then across, if the board remembers, I think it was 2 months ago, Michelle presented an overall allocation plan for surplus funds across the entire grant, across every line in the grant account. And from that, a decision was made to reserve $21,000 of the surplus funds to do another grant to Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods. And so all $21,000 will be distributed to families. There's not, none of this goes into Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods like administrative expenses or overhead. They're just distributing it according to the same, they're following the same guidelines that were set out in the original Hudson Routes agreement. So they're just moving the money out into the community with actually a lot cheaper than St. Catherine's was able to, because they're a slightly more nimble organization.
And the scale is smaller. We don't have like $80,000 a month.
That's right. So let's see. There's background section that explains how we got here. This is the eligibility section that explains that who are the recipients need to be and how the funds are to be used for housing assistance in certain appropriate cases. We laid out a prioritization scheme. And then this is the documentation. We are keeping the recipients confidential, but then this is the reporting that they're giving back.
Can I ask a question about that? Two things I want to ask. I remember when we were giving was it the $6,000 or $9,000? Was it $9,000?
$9,000.
Okay, and you had searched other agencies. It wasn't just one, and you made a decision between the other agencies that Greater Promise was the one we were going to go at.
Mm-hmm.
Could you somehow in here indicate that you just didn't go straight to one, but there were others, but you made the decision out of others that also were qualified to receive this?
Yeah, I can do that. I don't know if is that like the appropriate place to put in an MOU?
I'm not sure, but it should be somewhere that we to show that it was, other agencies had the choice. I mean,
I think that should go in our notes as far
Okay,
as the board minutes, but not in an MOU.
okay, so.
Yeah, so I can sure, I can write up kind of like a.
Minutes.
It's in the minutes?
I'm saying if it's not, we should definitely highlight it in the minutes, as you're saying.
The way the minutes are kind of written in a way that it just generalizes things. So it needs to be highlighted in the minutes that it wasn't that we just went to one, we did oversee,
Sure.
we did look into others.
Yeah, I can write up like a one-pager on the process why we picked Greater Hudson, Teresa. Just because this is between us and Greater Hudson, I don't want to be like, we didn't pick these guys because we didn't like whatever, So I can write that up for you.
Yeah, I agree that the MOU isn't the place to specify that.
And then on C where it says be kept confidential for Greater, what exactly does that mean? Chris, could you, when they say confidential, what exactly does that mean legally? And why, in other words, are we gonna know the people's name? The one, we're dispersing the funds, right?
Well, we're making the grant and Promise is dispersing the funds, but yeah. Promise is the one who is interacting with the families and yeah.
Because
There's some rationale to
we were not that satisfied with St. Catherine's, right? Remember?
They performed what they needed to. We have a smaller pot of money now, so it makes sense to go with a leaner organization that doesn't have the high overhead.
I just don't know if it should be confidential. I think that the board should, that information for oversight reasons should, the board should be able to get it if they need it. That's just for oversight reasons. Am I saying the wrong thing, Chris?
So I haven't seen this agreement before, but I guess what I'm reading on the screen here is that the identifying information about the recipients.
Mhm.
So are you looking to make sure that there's an audit trail?
I mean, an oversight trail in a sense,
Mhm.
you know, like who's, you know, when I'm just, we're the board,
You-
we're responsible. Is there, how do
You want to make sure, for example, that Promise isn't just distributing it to, I mean, although I'm not sure even if we knew the names of the people that we would be able to that we would,
Well,
investigate.
you want to
what their
have, I mean,
relationship
am I
is.
wrong to say that? I mean, I just read this too, so, you know, I want to read it more before we agree on it if we have time. But I mean, shouldn't there be some type of oversighting put in place by the board? Am I wrong to ask for that or say that, Chris?
So I can understand the desire to have confidentiality on the part of the individuals who are receiving assistance, but presumably the vendor should be maintaining that information and it should be auditable. Would that address your concern?
Yes, exactly. In other words, auditable being available to us if we such at some time would want it.
Definitely
Because
Promise
I-
will be keeping track of this information. I think like for one circumstance, for example, if they were to send us a report on the work, it would not be something that we would broadcast in a public HCDPA meeting.
No,
Yeah.
but available to us if we ask, because the way I read this from the last time, remember when I first came, you had said, well, that information is not even available to the board. And I'm like, well, it should be. Because we're not going to tell anybody, but that's what I'm saying.
Is there any sort of, this is a great kind of situational question for learning about, as a lot of us new board members and staff are learning on the job, like if information's made available to the board, for example, if Promise emailed a report that had identifying information and then someone foiled that, is that a standard that we do want? Is it a standard that we want this to be publicly available information, people who received?
Is it
housing
foilable,
assistance?
you're saying?
So
I don't think
Sarah, what,
personal
I-
information is not foilable. It might be like demographics maybe, but I don't think personal information, confidential stuff is not foilable of who's
Okay.
receiving it, but maybe the demographics.
that's correct, Dominic. There's an exception from what would normally be foilable for things that would essentially invade personal privacy.
Mhm.
Being the recipient of a grant like this, the identification of that person could presumably be protected, but the demographic data for sure, numbers, anything that's non-identifying would absolutely be foilable and should be, a part of a public document. There should be caution in caring for that kind of identifying information. But that doesn't mean that it isn't part of the records that are auditable in circumstances, even if it's your third-party auditor that is, reviewing those for you in confidence.
Mhm.
That answers my question.
Mhm.
So do we need to make an amendment to this MOU? And how should we proceed?
I don't know what the rest of the MOU says, so.
She didn't get a chance to read it yet. I didn't even get a chance to finish the whole thing.
Well, it is the same as the previous MOU that we had.
The one with St. Catherine's, because I don't have.
No, the one with Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods from the previous
Okay.
grant.
I don't think I saw that.
No, I don't think you did either.
Okay.
That was before we hired you. So I didn't back.
Well, we did the MOU for St. Catherine's, but,
Right.
right.
My question is for the purposes of this section around documentation, specifically around this MOU with Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods. Is there a small edit that we need to make? Like, all identifying information about recipients is to be kept confidential by Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhoods, unless, or does that statement
But
capture?
available for oversight or audible, I don't know. I think we should let the attorney kind of look at it and put the right legal terms in there. I mean, you know, that's just the way I don't have the legal term to it, and I don't want to say something that later on will hurt us.
Michelle, didn't an attorney draft this document?
No,
Oh, I see.
I don't think
Okay.
so. Right.
So,
didn't have an attorney.
And this is a legal document that's going to, you know, this is what we're going to stand up if something happens, you know. So really, you know, in my opinion, an attorney should be doing these things. You know, you ladies are bright and smart, but you know.
right, well, we we would have loved to have an attorney support us with this sort of work.
You know,
Takes yeah.
Can we hear from the
I
rest of
didn't
the board?
finish law school. Go ahead.
Just making sure that does anyone else on the board want to comment? Agreeing with Teresa, disagreeing, having another point?
I agree that, you know, the attorney should probably look at it and just do the wordage right, you know, pursuant audit, you know, that the following information and whatever the attorney feels the information needs to be, you know, kept, you know, for whatever years, right? Because you need them for so many years. You know, in the event that an audit, that the material is going to be readily available, you know, for audit.
So in the original St. Catherine's agreement, we had essentially attached sections of the grant agreement that required you to require of your subgrantees or subvendors certain things, including a right to audit and a requirement that they retain records for a period of time and so forth. So I think if this is a grant funded program under the same grant, all of that same language should be included in this agreement.
It was.
The paperwork, but
We had
I'm sorry.
that was included.
Okay, well, again, I haven't read this agreement, so I don't know what you included in here, so.
Sure.
I'm just saying, if you use the St. Catherine's version, it has a right to audit in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can we allow the attorney to look this over and then come back to this?
But yeah, that was my recommendation, was going to be, you know, we're not going to be able to do any voting on this, obviously. So I say we table this, let Chris work her magic and bring it to the next meeting for hopefully the vote.
I mean, we can all vote on it if, you know, if the majority says no, then, you know, but.
So I guess my only thing is that there's families who are in need and they'd have to wait another month and they'd have to wait another week for the checks to process. And I'm wondering if there's a way, if to vote for it per Chris's approval, is there a way to give permission so we don't have to wait until mid-June?
Or to
You
call
wanna
a
have a
special
special
meeting
meeting?
for the first.
You want to have a special meeting?
That was my thought too, is that if we could have a special meeting in 2 weeks or so, but importantly, really before the first, so that checks can go out.
Yeah, I would totally support a special meeting that, you know,
Yeah.
we don't want to hold anyone up, but then again, we don't want to do the wrong thing on one side of it too. So
Right.
I totally agree to a special meeting to make sure that, you know, this can move forward in a timely manner. But yeah, I agree. Let's have a special meeting.
And now that we have an attorney, do we have an attorney? Yes or no? Chris,
Yes.
okay, so now let's use that attorney.
Okay.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay, we got a plan. Thank you all for your care and attention with this. Appreciate it.
Do we need a formal motion to call for a special meeting in this, or?
Yeah,
I'll make that motion.
I'll
I
second it.
second.
Oh, Don Armand did second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. And just real quick, well, I'll just follow up online. I just want to make sure that I understand Chris's timeline for turning something like this around. But so look out for an email from me this afternoon about scheduling that meeting. Okay.
I'm
Stop the
making it a
share.
priority, Sarah.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so I think, does that conclude the ADLN program updates? And
Yeah.
we could move on to the Hudson Housing Fund? Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Al. So Hudson Housing Trust Fund. So we've had a couple of board meetings. We're meeting once a month right now, and right now is the unglamorous work of putting together all of our governance documents. So what to expect from us is that right now we're working on creating all of our guiding documents and onboarding our board members. And we're doing outreach in June and kind of updating our housing needs assessment and thinking about what our goals are. And so we're going to come to you all in like July or August, presenting our budget. It's kind of an odd time of year, but we're starting at an odd time of year and we're not going to have any expenses until the midsummer. And so we'll be presenting you with our operating budget and our program budget. And I'll give you all the contextual documents so you're prepared to look that over. Because part of your role is just approving that budget and making sure it's in line with our mission of HCDPA and our mission of the trust fund.
Michelle,
Yes.
are you working with an attorney on those documents?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. And then, so we still have Kate Hedgeman is finishing out her retainer with us to make that. And then once we finish that, the plan moving forward is that we would, if it is amenable with HCDPA's attorney, work with HCDPA attorney, and then we'd, the trust fund would reimburse HCDPA for any time used. So that's something we can discuss more.
So make sure you send it to our attorney so she has a chance to look at it before.
Yeah, I need to hear an awful lot more about that.
Yes,
Know
please.
anything about this entity or how it was created or what its authority was. So I'm going to need to be briefed by Kate is my suggestion so that I can understand what it is that you're looking for. Okay,
Cool.
if I could.
Do that. Thank you. And then
Chris, it would probably be good that you meet with Michelle for a full update as well on her particular grant.
Right, I think so, but I also think I need to have a conversation with Kate so that I understand where she was, you know.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying them both.
Yes, for sure. I agree. I agree, Mayor. Yep.
And the other thing that is relevant to y'all is that we have currently 6 members on the board. We can have up to 9. We're expecting, you know, Nick Zakos is serving as by right of his, or as part of his position as the interim director of the HHI. Expecting a transition to a permanent director in coming months. And so if he's interested in serving, then we'd be submitting his nomination through y'all. And if we have looking for some more members to round out the board, so you might have some other nominations coming your way for the June HCDPA meeting. So I'll send the information in advance. And if you have questions of the candidates, I can get that ready. It'd be the same process that we did the previous ones, through which I'd screen them, I'd get their background info, and then submit that out to you.
So the board should be attending your meetings, or is it okay if we don't?
It is okay if you don't.
Okay.
If there's ever, I mean, the minutes.
I don't want to get meeting out.
No, I mean, posting the minutes on, there's like a new housing trust fund. We're under the boards and committees part of the website. So you're welcome to read those. If you would like any other information or you want me to give you the 411, happy to do so, but you do not need to attend. Okay, anything else? Other questions or comments from me? Cool. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, our next order of business is updates from the HHA.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Ravonda.
HHA had a really exciting week last week. We got to do some amazing interviews. We have asked 2 of those candidates to come back this Friday so we can give them a second interview. Shortly after that, we'll be holding a discussion. So hopefully we have who we want next week. Other than that, I know that HHA lawyers and HCDPA lawyers had a meeting. Unfortunately, we were holding interviews at that time, so I couldn't attend. So I'll turn this over to you guys for an update on that.
That's right. Nick Zakos and the lawyers from HHA and I and Chris met. Was that last week? I think it was. And I thought Nick was going to join us today, so I didn't have, let me just see if I can find, yeah, I have some notes here.
Unfortunately, he did contact this morning and said he wasn't able to attend.
Yeah, he's one of the busiest people in town. What I have from my notes, just looking quickly, is that there was a meeting. I know that HHA is deeply in communication with state HUD or HCR. Which is it?
All of the above.
HDR.
Yeah, HCR. Authorities who understand how urgent Hudson's need is in terms of the state of some of our HHA facilities, and that there's a need to act quickly. That attorneys have been authorized to put out an RFP soon, in the window of like maybe the next month or two is what I understood. And let's see, that scattered site development is very much in play, which is part of why some of the properties that HCDPA owns are of interest. And there's still a strong desire on HHA's part to include HCDPA properties in an RFP. And let's see. So there's a desire, if we were to move forward with some sort of partnership that's been discussed, that we could pursue putting together an MOU about how we would proceed with including those properties in an RFP and what sorts of, there was a discussion about, I have a note that says money or input or both, that we would, obviously receive compensation for any properties that were to be developed by HHA, but also could, have a relationship of collaboration as possible. Chris, do you have anything else that you remember from that meeting that I didn't capture? I know we didn't prepare.
Yeah, no, I thought Nick was going to try to prepare some talking points for you, but no, I think you covered most of it. I think that they did say that there were a number of ways that they could see structuring this, whether or not that would be HCDPA being a partner in the RFP, or whether that would mean HCDPA getting some kind of an option payment if the property were selected for development as part of the RFP, ahead of an actual closing on a project.
That's right, because the closing could take some time. Could happen sometime next year. Would that be the imagination? Would that be what we would imagine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they would be looking to put it into a funding round, and that's what they're looking for, is to put it out so that a project could be proposed by a developer, and a funding application could be submitted for a project that would include these parcels. That's what HHA was requesting.
Mm-hmm. So to be clear, the board has not yet decided to pursue this partnership, but it's been a conversation we've been having for a long time. And so we're just getting clearer on the things that have changed between the last time we spoke and now, is that last time we didn't have any clarity that an RFP would go out even this year. Or at least I didn't have that clarity. And I don't think that was what we discussed. And so now we are learning that it's that an RFP could move forward more quickly. And that, so in terms of what we would like to do, in terms of, you know, HCDPA's revenue needs and the properties that we have, we've discussed the need to dispose of some property in order to raise money to have another few years of operating while we try to transition into a, you know, a strategic capacity where this board is managing, is earning revenue by managing and distributing grants rather than by managing property. So, right, what has changed, the new information that we have is that an RFP could move forward quickly. And so we have the ability to, you know, our choice point is, do we want to participate in an RFP? And under what conditions?
And
so that's what
would be our other options,
right?
I think
well, our
that's
other
what
options
we talked about.
would be sort of an open-ended, who else would we want to, you know, maybe putting out our own RFP to sell to anybody else. So that's, I mean, that is the choice point. Though, yeah, we would want to talk quite vigorously about that. In my opinion, there's some great, there's a lot of great reasons to support HHA in this process that's so essential.
Is it possible that we could maybe get a meeting with the an attorney-client session?
You mean like a private meeting?
Yeah, to, you know, still.
Yeah, I would
mean,
agree with that. I think
Yeah.
that there's some
Exactly.
confidential information regarding this that you know, can't be shared with the public, that would help us make a more informed decision.
So we're planning to schedule a special meeting. Would this look like we would have a special meeting and then we would go into executive session?
So,
Yeah,
sure, it's not an executive session technically, Sarah. It's an attorney-client session that would be a discussion with, on my part with the board, about legal issues surrounding the process, if that's what we're going to talk about. And then the board would not be in a private session to discuss the merits of a particular, in this case, we don't have a particular proposal. So it would be to discuss, the discussion of process would come out into public session, but discussions with me about what legal requirements are would be an attorney-client session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Meaning that each of us has to hold that information and not expose it.
Right, we can't break attorney-client privilege. So
That's what
does it make,
right? Yep.
since we'll already be planning to meet, it might make sense to have our special meeting. So I'm hearing we'll have our special meeting around the Promised Neighborhoods MOU, and then we would adjourn, but all continue, and then we could hold the time after that meeting for us to discuss. Because if that special meeting just has one item, it will be very fast.
What I would usually suggest is that we would adjourn the meeting to an attorney-client session and then come back so that the board would then close the meeting, or could take, you know, whatever discussions it wanted to after the attorney-client session. So you wouldn't actually close your public meeting until after we're all done, because they might want to take an action after they have had a conversation with me.
yeah, I agree.
So that's what you usually do.
I
Go
just
back.
froze
Yeah.
over here, so
We can hear you now, Sarah.
yeah. I heard you say that we would adjourn to an attorney-client session and then come back.
Right,
I
right.
see.
typically, just because then the board would have an opportunity to have a discussion afterwards. if
I
they-
see. Okay. Okay, so then do we need to, I learned at our last special meeting that we have to, do we need to make a motion for every item to put on the special meeting agenda?
I mean, I'll make that motion.
The motion to have an attorney-client
To-
session.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll
and
second.
The RFP. Okay. All
And,
in
I-
favor?
and maybe, Mayor, maybe you want to add the, potential discussion of the disposition of property, just so that that's really what the subject would be, if you want to discuss that further at that point.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion to have an executive attorney-client session during the next special meeting, as well as potential conversation around distributing properties.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Okay. That's great. Okay. So that sounds like that's our next step. What else, is there anything else that we would need to, so in that meeting would include this board, Chris and I, or that executive session, but we may also want, is there anyone else that we want to, okay,
No.
not for the attorney-client, but
Not for the
like,
attorney-client.
but in the following section,
Oh.
should we ask Nick, or do we need to sort of, is there any more, perhaps we want to have another proposed, the timeline for HHA might be, by the time we have the special meeting, there's kind of more information in place to prepare us for a smoother conversation in the attorney-client session. So I guess I'm asking, do we want to add HHA updates to that agenda?
I don't think that's because we don't know. I mean, the new executive director could be in play. I mean, there's a lot of different things that
Okay.
could be in play before that. But Chris, so with this executive session, it has nothing to do with whatever the proposal that HHA has that is undrafted or just in conversation. That won't be done by that meeting, correct? Because we're definitely going to need to look at that before making any decisions, correct?
So as I understand it, you all would like to have a discussion with me about the procedures around disposition of property and the procedures around disposition of the property that you've got identified as property that's available at this point. So I think we're going to have that discussion, and then I think, you have a pending request from HHA to include a couple of particular properties in their RFP. So at that point, you'll have to decide what information you want in order to make a decision about that, I think.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So a better understanding, Chris, would be, I think there's some information that's pertinent for us as a board to know, but it has to come from HHA, but it's confidential information that, they will not be able to tell the public. That's why I think the request for executive session was originally stated.
And am I hearing that just there is a distinction between an attorney-client meeting and executive session where is it in the attorney-client meeting, can we speak only in general terms about disposition?
Yeah, what I'm talking about is an executive session.
I see.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So Sarah, there's a particular list of things that you can go into executive session about, right? And that is for the board to have discussion about those particular items. It's something on the list. It has to be one of the things on the list in order for you to have an executive session. An attorney-client session is sort of a one-way conversation, if you will, in which, the board may ask questions and I can give legal advice in confidence.
I see.
That's the difference.
So what I'm hearing is that we need both an executive session and an attorney-client session.
You don't need to schedule an executive session. The
I see.
The guidance from COOG is that when you're having an open meeting, the board can move to go into executive session when it's appropriate, if it's appropriate.
I see. And okay, thanks, because I
Yep.
just didn't want to mess up the special meeting.
Nope. Right.
Okay. So then perhaps that's something we'll do at the special meeting. All right, I think that covers this topic. And the next item of business was the review of board procedures. I just wanted to share back that Teresa and I met and looked over some archival documents from the HCDPA, and Teresa, at the last meeting, we decided that Teresa and I, with a little bit of support from Kamal, would take the lead at writing up an standard operating procedures for HCDPA based on the existing documents that we have floating around in our bylaws, and then to identify some strategic orientations as we move forward. I already mentioned the need to find, to identify alternative revenue strategies, specifically through grant management. But there's also, we as a board might want to review our bylaws, potentially make some amendments to our bylaws. And the point of this process is just for us to surface all of the existing sort of frameworks for how this board operates and review them together and make sure that there are, if there are any changes that we want to make, that we have the opportunity to do that. So the update is just that Teresa and I have started that work and don't have anything to show for it yet. Probably not for another, probably not at next month's meeting.
It's called brainstorming in my.
We're brainstorming.
Yeah, just putting our brains together, fighting, then coming back together, kissing and hugging, and then fighting.
And I'm sure you're aware of this, but you have to comply with the Paris reporting requirements and make sure that you have all of your policies and procedures adopted and in place and on the website. So that's something for you on your housekeeping list that you need to make sure to attend to. Okay.
Exactly. I think
And
that
we will have an attorney, input.
help with it. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah. So once we have something like a starting framework, that's right, we'll share it with you. Things, for example, on my mind that when I think about if I eventually transition from this role, then like having a file storage rules written down for somebody to take on, or that's the sort of standard operating procedure type of detail that I'm interested in. Just making sure that we.
How about an office? An office for, if we're going to continue as a board.
Yes.
So.
For example, our bylaws state that we have an office, and we don't. The office is in my house. So things to consider. So that's the update there. And we have no new business on the agenda. So I think we can open it up for public comment. And if there are none, we could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? Teresa seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you
Have
all.
a good day, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye.